Hello, I'm Michael Cottingham, and today we're going to talk about one of my favorite anti-inflammatory herbal medicines, and that is turmeric. And the Latin is Curcuma longa, and there are many species of turmeric that have been used, but that is kind of like the main or the official species, Curcuma longa, and mostly known by most people as the turmeric spice. And it's like, well, turmeric is, I don't know, it may be the most effective nutritional supplement in existence, but it is readily available, and it can now be found in just about every marketplace, can be ordered online, can be found as a dry spice, which is mostly what people find is the yellow powder of turmeric, more available than the fresh roots, but the fresh roots have become quite readily available in commerce throughout the world, actually. And it is one of the most studied herbal medicines, one of the most studied herbal medicines slash spices in existence. I mean, there are well over 1,000 research papers worldwide on the uses and the medicinal benefits of turmeric, and mostly focused in a couple main categories, one of which is the anti-inflammatory properties. Turmeric contains a series of compounds known as curcuminoids, and curcuminoids, it's a big group of compounds, and in that group is curcumin, and curcumin is perhaps one of the most studied specific chemical constituents out of almost any herbal medicine for that matter, but especially with turmeric. That's where most of the focus and most of the studies have been done, have been on curcumin, and curcumin is a curcuminoid found in turmeric roots. The constituent curcumin has been studied well in depth. I mean, maybe 700-800 research papers on curcumin have been done, and some of them from highly esteemed sources. And so curcumin is perhaps one of nature's finest natural anti-inflammatory compounds. I mean, it rivals steroidal drugs and pharmaceutical anti-inflammatories in its effectiveness. And this is not folk medicine and not pretend herbal medicine. This is well documented from scientific research papers from all over the world. I mean, you need inflammation in the body when you have an infection, or I mean, inflammation is incredibly important. It helps the body fight foreign invaders, and also has a role in repairing tissue damage. And without inflammation, pathogens like bacteria could easily take over our bodies and do us in, to kill us. And so, you know, although acute or short-term inflammation is extremely beneficial in the human body, it can become a major problem when it becomes chronic or long-term, and this is where you will find, well, it is now believed that chronic low-level inflammation plays a major role in almost every chronic Western disease. And this includes things like heart disease, cancer, metabolic waste buildup kind of diseases, Alzheimer's, arthritic conditions. I mean, something as simple as a sprain or a strain on a muscle or connective tissue injury, or even minor surgery can be, the healing can be impaired greatly by this chronic systemic inflammation that most people in the West, in the industrialized countries specifically, I mean, carry with them almost all the time. And chronic inflammation comes from a number of different sources, but almost, you know, most of it can be traced back to, you know, standard American diet and foods that are slow and sluggish and hard to break down, and lack of exercise and lack of drinking enough water. So, I mean, there are different things that contribute to systemic chronic inflammation. And, you know, you find it very prevalent in countries where there's a lot of affluence and there's a lot of wealth and there's a lot of sedentary type of lifestyles and foods that are rich and abundant and coupled with a lack of drinking enough water and a lack of movement, you know, not enough exercise. I mean, chronic inflammation is the underlying cause of so many of our chronic health problems and chronic diseases in the West. Well, as you know, there are three categories of plants that I like a lot, and that's the circulatory plants, the lymphatic plants, and the anti-inflammatory plants, because I believe that in almost any illness or disease, and most of the acute things like viral infections and bacterial infections, we got to do three things. We got to improve circulation with plants like ginger root and rosemary. These are good circulatory plants, and there are others as well. We have to improve the lymphatic flow in the body. I like things like red root, Ceanothus species, red root and cleavers. Those are some of my most used lymphatic plants. And then there's the third category of the anti-inflammatories, and the two plants that I tend to use a lot of. Number one, I live in the Southwest, and I have a fair abundance of a plant called Yerba manza, or Anomopsis californica. But turmeric is like also one of my favorite anti-inflammatory plants. So my students, they learn that we concentrate in the very beginning on how to improve circulation through things like rosemary leaf and ginger root. We learn how to improve the lymphatic flow throughout the body to reduce lymphatic congestion, which is almost a companion to chronic inflammation. You almost always have lymphatic congestion going on when you have chronic inflammation. So I use like red root and cleavers for that. And for the anti-inflammatories, I use yerba manza and turmeric quite a bit. And turmeric has many other uses for it. Some of them which I jotted down. I don't or have not used them in all of these cases, but since turmeric has been so researched, hundreds and hundreds, if not well over 1,000 papers on turmeric, and most of them focusing on the anti-inflammatory compound curcumin and how it affects inflammation and how it decreases inflammation, and many research papers focusing in on the anti-inflammatory aspects of turmeric. But it's been used in arthritic conditions, which would be like one of those anti-inflammatory categories, but more so used in heartburn and diarrhea and excessive gas or flatulence in the body, poor digestion in general. In the standard American diet or in the Western countries, there tends to be poor, sluggish digestion for the most part. I mean, people eat their food and it kind of sits there, and they have a slow transit time, a slow processing time, and as a result of that, they can end up with a whole variety of different problems, from chronic headaches to skin problems to constipation to heartburn to digestive insomnia. There are a lot of things that can be traced back, a lot of problems people come to me for that I trace back to poor, sluggish digestion. And turmeric is a plant that can actually help improve digestion, addressing a whole series of different things like headaches and insomnia and skin rashes and skin problems, eczemas and psoriasis that really don't have a concrete explanation as to why you have them. But nobody has really looked into your poor digestion and your inability to break down and digest your foods and to eliminate your foods properly. And when they do, they find that sometimes a spice or an herbal tea made from turmeric, some of the yellow powder just used on a regular basis in your food, and you start to cook with it and start to eat it more, or you make a tea from the dry spice, the dry powder, or you make a fresh plant extract from turmeric, and then take a few drops of that in and around meal time, you can find that you improve your digestion greatly, and a lot of your peripheral problems, things like headaches or digestive insomnia or skin rashes and irritations, will clear up. And that's because you had poor digestion, which was the root cause of all of this. But as one of the premier anti-inflammatory plants, I mean, turmeric has enough science and enough research to back up the fact that curcumin, the constituent that's responsible for the major anti-inflammatory effects, is really as effective as most of the pharmaceutical drugs that are out there. The curcumin is only one constituent in this plant. There are aromatic oils, and there are so many other medicinal constituents within turmeric. So a lot of people focus in on those concentrates, the concentrated turmeric powders and extracts and things where the curcumin has been increased. And there's nothing wrong with that, but to isolate or to focus in on one compound as the only thing that turmeric has to offer is a great mistake. It is better to use whole fresh turmeric or dry turmeric in your cooking and use it and bring it in as a food slash spice slash medicine type of plant, or to make a whole root, chopped up root, whole root, fresh root extract. You will get less of the curcumin, but that's okay. Some people will actually, and you'll read about this all over the internet, and there are a lot of recommendations of where people take dry curcumin, or dry turmeric rather, or fresh turmeric, and when they're eating it, they also bring in black pepper. Black pepper contains a constituent called piperine, and piperine makes it so that when you ingest turmeric in the body, if you're also taking black pepper, you will increase the absorption in your bloodstream of more of the curcumin, more of the specific anti-inflammatory compound curcumin. You will absorb more of it by using a little bit black pepper. In this extract, this fresh root extract of turmeric, I could add just a couple pinches of black pepper in with this, and a lot of people do that now, and that will potentiate and make it more absorbable in your bloodstream. The curcumin, that one particular constituent, will be more bioavailable in your bloodstream, and that is like the major anti-inflammatory compound, or the constituent where most of the research has been focused in on. So you can do that. You can put a little black pepper in with your turmeric extract, or in with your turmeric tea, and you'll see, like if you go to buy turmeric supplements, you'll see where companies have already added a little black pepper to potentiate and to increase the effectiveness of curcumin in the bloodstream. There's a problem with that if you're on some of the allopathic drugs, if you're on some of the pharmaceutical drugs that are anticoagulating, antiplatelet in nature. The potentiating of turmeric by the use of black pepper can make some of the drugs stronger in your bloodstream, which can throw everything off. It can confuse, you might end up having to decrease your dosages of whatever pharmaceutical drug that you're taking with your doctor's supervision, and so it gets tricky. So I would say that if you're on any anticoagulating drugs or any antiplatelet-like drugs, and some of the heart medicines and some of the blood pressure medicines, you might not want to add black pepper to your turmeric and make the turmeric or make the curcumin stronger than it needs to be. So using dry turmeric root and using fresh root in your cooking or as your teas or in your medicine is a much safer way to go, and you don't necessarily need to increase the effectiveness of the curcumin. I mean, all you have to do is use turmeric on a longer basis. It's safer that way, and we don't necessarily need to manipulate or potentiate the turmeric medicine for long periods of time. I would say maybe for a short period of time, like say you had some extremely severe joint inflammation, and maybe you wanted to make a really strong anti-inflammatory and only do it for a couple weeks, then maybe, yeah, you could add a little black pepper, provided you weren't on any pharmaceutical drugs that could be contraindicated. Turmeric is very effective. Turmeric is a very effective plant medicine, and I don't think we need to manipulate it or potentiate it all that often. I think it's pretty safe to say that fresh turmeric roots or dry turmeric powder or the extract that you can make yourself is sufficient. You don't really need to add the black pepper element to it and make it stronger than it needs to be, especially if you're on pharmaceutical drugs. Although when you go to buy this, you'll see so many companies are actually potentiating and strengthening and making it more, much more stronger than it really needs to be. And people are always focused in on like, a singularity, or like in this case, most of the research was done on that one constituent, curcumin. And so everything rallies around that, and it's great to know that it's in this plant, but there are many other things. The aromatic oils that are in this plant, turmeric is not as aromatic and as spicy as, say, like ginger root, but it is laden with a lot of essential oils and a lot of aromatics that are very antiviral and antibacterial. And that's kind of like why I prefer a fresh root extract over a dry root extract, is because I love to capture those aromatics, because they create vasodilation, they create a circulatory effect. And so not only with turmeric do you get this great anti-inflammatory compound and this anti-inflammatory effect, and there are other constituents in turmeric that actually work as anti-inflammatory in nature as well. So not just the curcumin, even though that's where all the focus has been. I like to use the fresh root because I capture the aromatics, I capture all the oils, and that helps to create circulation, much better circulatory effect than most people give turmeric credit for. And then you've got the anti-inflammatory effects going along. So for me, you've got two of my favorite categories covered. You've got the circulatory aspect and the anti-inflammatory aspect in this one plant. And this is a pretty amazing thing. This makes turmeric a great medicine for reducing inflammation from so many illnesses and so many diseases that people have carried with them for so long. And it's to turmeric or not to turmeric, gosh. Well, I don't know if to tell you this but when I'm making these films, often, like, I have nobody to assist me, so I have to set everything up and set the camera up and walk around and get in and do a little cutting and such. And sometimes I just have like a really amazing, almost mystical, like, rap that just happens. I mean, things just flow, and so missed it. It kind of didn't get recorded. And so here we are, starting up again. Hopefully it'll be as mystical as it was. But it's gone now, out into wherever those bits of film that don't get recorded go. And, of all of the categories of plants, the circulatory plants, the lymphatic plants, the anti-inflammatory plants, the antivirals, the antibacterials, etc., of all the categories of plants that are actually out there, the anti-inflammatories are one of the most important. Actually, in many respects, the anti-inflammatory plants are more important than almost any other category, because I've become a firm believer that chronic inflammation is in every illness and disease, and whether it's an acute viral infection or acute bacterial infection, whether you have chronic arthritis or fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome or Epstein-Barr virus, it doesn't really matter. It's just there's chronic inflammation present in almost all of these conditions and more. And so using good herbal anti-inflammatories can literally create a revolution in one's health. I mean, a positive revolution, because when you decrease inflammation it means your immune system is more effective in fighting off pathogens and repairing and keeping you healthy and keeping you vibrant and strong. When you reduce inflammation, you actually have a better circulatory system and a better lymphatic system. When you reduce chronic inflammation, you have better waste removal and better nutrients coming in, finding the places they need to go. When you remove chronic inflammation, you can improve the health of the human body tenfold, hundredfold, whatever statistic you want to like tag to it. It doesn't really matter. When you reduce chronic inflammation in the human body, it works better and is healthier. And this has become now one of the cornerstones of my practice. Improving circulation, decreasing inflammation, and improving the lymphatic flow throughout the body. And then I might use other specific herbs to address specific problems in whatever organ system or whatever part of the body that I want to work with. But I no longer sidestep, or I no longer just kind of think it as a secondary thing of importance, this chronic inflammatory condition. I now think it is one of the most important things to address right as soon as you can in any illness, in any disease, and to address it in a manner that it's more important than you might think. It's so much more important, and it is part of the foundation. When we eliminate chronic inflammation, we literally are, giving one of the best things we can do, one of the best aids, one of the best assistances to the immune system to go out and work to keep us in homeostasis, to keep us in balance. So I can't overemphasize enough the importance of things like turmeric and the things like yerba manza, the plant like yerba manza and Amopsis californica. Also, there are secondary anti-inflammatory like herbs. They don't necessarily directly decrease inflammation directly, like yerba manza and like turmeric does, but there's a whole array of different plants that improve and decrease inflammation, and things like milk thistle for the liver, and burdock and dandelion for the liver and kidneys. These are plants that help to decrease inflammation as a secondary consequence of you consuming them. They don't have the constituents or the chemistry that distinctly is anti-inflammatory in the human body, but they are nice adjuncts, and there are many, many more out there. Red root, cleavers, ginger root, they have other aspects to them, and they have other medicinal functions, but in roundabout ways they too are anti-inflammatory. But there's nothing quite like an extract of fresh turmeric or an extract of fresh yerba manza as having almost immediate anti-inflammatory effects in the body. And so just briefly, I mean, there's a lot of information on turmeric on the internet and in books, and it's very popular these days, and there are many supplements, and with black pepper and without black pepper, and concentrated amounts of the constituent cumin, and just straight up ground up turmeric dry, and fresh turmeric, and there's there's volumes of information and volumes of testimony, and hundreds and hundreds of research papers. But here's some of the things that turmeric actually can influence in a positive manner. Arthritis, chronic arthritic conditions, heartburn, diarrhea, flatulence, loss of appetite, headaches, bronchitis, colds, lung infections, fibromyalgia, and there's a whole nother class, a whole nother section of research papers dedicated to the anti-carcinogenic properties of turmeric and how it can be used in many different types of cancers. And there's also topically, turmeric has a history of being used for ringworm and for staph infections, and topically and internally for leprosy. Now, anytime you got a plant that has a history of being a positive medicine for leprosy, I mean, that's a big medicine. Leprosy was a very detrimental um, health problem in many countries, in India and Africa. And so, I mean, turmeric coming out of India with thousands and thousands of years of history, being used for parasitic infections and being used for topically for staph and for ringworm and for you know, tropical and parasitic infections of the skin and for leprosy. This is big. This is a big medicine in its original country of origin, out of India, and then it spread throughout the world during the spice trading days and became used and as a spice and as a medicine. Culture after culture that came in contact with turmeric, they just started adopting and using it for hundreds of different reasons and hundreds of different illnesses and diseases. So turmeric is an amazing plant medicine. You should read about it, make extracts from it, bring it into your cooking as fresh or as dry. Start to feel its effects on your body. Put it into your formulas. It's really good in almost any formula, whether you're treating urinary tract or stomach or respiratory or sinus, to have a good anti-inflammatory in your formula. And turmeric could be that one that goes in there. The aromatic oils of turmeric are very antimicrobial. They're antiviral, antibacterial in nature. They're also very positive circulatory aspects to the aromatic oils. So not only do you get a circulatory plant, you get an anti-inflammatory plant. This one plant can make people feel better. Just a tea of turmeric or encapsulated dry turmeric or a tincture of turmeric. This one plant has so many things going for it. You know, antimicrobial action, anti-inflammatory action, distinct circulatory action, and those are big categories in herbal medicines, and big categories of our uses. We're always looking for good anti-inflammatories. We're always looking for good antivirals, antibacterials. This is a plant that can be used internally and topically. So, I mean, it's a plant that can be used in cooking, as in small amounts on a regular basis, as well as being used as a medicine in larger amounts for more specific things. Turmeric, and one of our finest medicine plants. And thank you so much.